In season 1, there was a deliberate choice of mine to be less verbose because I didn't have the luxury of the show being dedicated purely to Geralt, and so you don't have that swathes of nuance and complex dialogue which you have in the books. And so I thought, okay, how do I reflect Geralt's intelligence and his wisdom? And I figured if I actually do the man who listens more and watches more, and sometimes for some light comedic moments makes a judgmental noise or two when someone's finished waffling or pontificating, then it might represent the character a little better. The advantage of going into season 2 is that I actually wanted to make sure that that book Geralt shined through a bit more, especially now that we have him in a personal environment. He's with Cirilla, who becomes his ward and ultimately a daughter-like figure to him. And then we're with his Witcher kin and his father-like figure in Vesemir. And so at that stage, he doesn't have to have the walls up. He doesn't have to be so closed off. And I wanted to really reach into it and just make sure that he had a more expanded vocabulary and that he sounded more intelligent and that he came across as someone who had the wisdom of between 70 and 90 years. For me, that was the real focal point of season 2. I don't think I found any moments where I was like, aha! I found a little deeper level to Geralt. It was more about making sure that that part of the books lived in the show. Mission Impossible Fallout. That was, firstly, an amazing movie to work on. Such a good fortune to work with the likes of Chris McQuarrie and Tom Cruise, and everyone on that. It was Rob Hardy, everyone, the DP that is, and I was counting my lucky stars every day.
That's not what this is about.
Sure it is. I know you don't want me on this detail. But let's face it, if you'd made the hard choice in Berlin, I wouldn't be here.
And if you hadn't gunned down every syndicate agent they sent you to find, I wouldn't be here. That's right, I know all about you. You're why we don't have a living witness who can identify John Mark or the Apostles.
If you have a problem with my methods, you can always stay behind. Your mission, should you choose to accept it, isn't that the thing?
Some of the days that I was not quite counting as many lucky stars as others was the helicopter sequence. Now, I loved it. I thought it was a lot of fun, but because I'm in a helicopter with the doors open above the mountains of New Zealand in winter, it's particularly cold. It took 2-3 weeks, maybe 4 weeks to shoot that. And so that's 4 weeks of me hanging outside a helicopter with my head in the wind. And I'm firing real blanks, and so it's not like CGI stuff added. So I'm having blank residue flying everywhere. I can't hear anything because my headset's not working. I'm just waiting for the pilot to scream something and give a signal. I'm like, I think he means rolling. We're moving, so maybe he means rolling. I'm just gonna stick my head out the window and start acting, and maybe we're catching something. That was probably the most difficult bit, but at the same time, the most thrilling, because you're in a scene with an actor and a producer as dedicated as Tom Cruise, who's learned how to stunt fly a helicopter in the mountains, which is a very different thing. Mountains are very difficult for helicopters. And you can see the whites of his eyes in the helicopter behind you as you're being chased. You're pretending to fire this huge machine gun at him. Everyone's so happy at the end of each day, and it's genuinely exciting. And then at the end of each day, I'm sitting on the skid of this helicopter looking out across the ocean off New Zealand above a glacier. And people don't get to do that. That was something which is once in a lifetime experience. And as much as it was a touch on the chilly side, it was an experience which I would not change for anything.
Enough games. I'll take you out of here.
Where's Hunt?
He's gone to the meeting with a copy of you.
Calm down. Call the Apostles. Warn them.
I have no way of contacting them, for their safety and mine. What I do have is an extraction team with satellite overwatch and a prearranged rendezvous. I'll know as soon as we leave the building.
Enola Holmes. The funny thing about approaching characters with as long a history as, say, Sherlock Holmes, is that I don't approach it deliberately with the intention to make it my own. I look at how it's been played before, and I had the very good fortune of working with Harry Bradbeer, and the character has been done so well before, and it's all the the classic direct adaptations of the source material have been done so wonderfully that it actually allowed me room to not necessarily do things precisely as the books have done before.
I have never seen such a range of romances in my life. It's enough standing to the newspapers. What in heavens are you looking for? Why might you be interested in the personals? You've gone quite mad.
I have a right to be mad in a place like this.
I was forced into calligraphy as a child. Hated it. But there's rarely a case where someone's handwriting doesn't tell me something I need to know.
And what might I learn from deportment?
The way a person stands may disguise who they are.
Because this is a story about Enola and Sherlock is a player within that story, I wanted to make sure that it was supporting Enola's story more than anything else. And to play Sherlock in the way I played it that was the intention always. It was always to make sure that Enola was the focus and that it was a character who would do nothing but highlight all of Enola's wonderfully positive traits. And we could tie back little family ties here and there, similarities, because ultimately Enola and Sherlock become quite a pair because they do have some real similarities in there.
Enola.
My God. Look at you. You're in such a mess. Where's your hat and your gloves?
Well, I have a hat. Just makes my head itch. And I have no gloves.
She has no gloves.
Plainly not microbed.
The Man from U.N.C.L.E. Guy Ritchie and I had plenty of conversations before we started shooting Man from U.N.C.L.E. And the wonderful thing about Guy is that he is very much a creator. He's very much a collaborator. And so we would literally sit in his house and talk through scenes and throw ideas around, and it was always an open playing field. And he was very honest. He would say, that's a terrible idea, we're never doing that. Or he would say, you know what, that's way better than my idea, and I'm kind of embarrassed. So let's put that in. Or we'd come back the next day and say, you know, I said it was a terrible idea, I've thought about it, it's not a terrible idea, it's actually a really good idea. We would work and manipulate this character, and we'd find the best way of doing things. And so as much as Robert Vaughn did an amazing job, we wanted to make this our own. And Guy has such a particular style, and he's such a wonderful director to work with. I felt like I was in very, very safe hands there. And so no matter what we did, he was going to create something cool, and we were going to do it together.
I'll let you tag along, but it's in and out, no mess, so nobody knows we've been here. And we both forget about it in the morning.
What is that?
Super hardened boron sharpened with a CO2 laser.
CO2 laser.
Immortals. It wasn't as challenging as one may think working on a green screen. Of course, Tarsem was very generous, and he had lots of artwork to show us, and would say, like, this is what you're looking at, basically, if we were looking off a cliff top into an expanse beyond. It definitely was a great introduction, because later in my career, I ended up working in pure green screen rooms, and that's a bit discombobulating. When it came to Immortals, it was a good warm-up for the rest of it. The Tudors. While playing Charles Brandon, I had the really good fortune of the creator of the show and the writer being Michael Hurst. Michael Hurst is very, very talented, and would always dive and delve deep into the history of all these characters to find the most interesting tidbits. And sometimes he would combine characters, otherwise there'd be too many Marys, Margarets, and Elizabeths to kind of make sense of a TV show. It's really hard to find material on Charles Brandon. I've looked, and he said, yeah, Charles Brandon is a tough one to find stuff on. And so he took what little he had, what little you could find in history, and really expanded upon it. It was such a pleasure having him write that character, because it was almost like he was bringing the character to life. I gave Michael a gift at the end of the show, saying if Charles Brandon were alive, he would today, he would thank you.
Your Grace? What do you want? Only to pass on His Majesty's love. He appreciates the role you will play at my Lord Buckingham's trial, and for all the care you have for His Majesty's well-being. He also sends you this.
So for me, it was using what came off the page, really. It was one of those pleasurable experiences of not having to really work against what's on the page or build it up into something else. Michael had done so much of the work there. The Count of Monte Cristo. I was 17 years old, playing 16, which at the time was a big difference, obviously, but for anyone our age now, not so much.
Several of my friends are going to Rome for 2 weeks during Carnival. I'd like to accompany them.
Rome? And no chaperones, Amber, you're only 15.
Almost 16. Make my birthday present, Father.
So I was in boarding school in England. I met with Priscilla John, who was a casting director. She was so supportive, and she really sort of helped me get the role, really. When it came to meeting with the director, Kevin Reynolds, it was a huge event for me because I was shortlisted for this movie at 17 years old. That's a massive deal, especially if you want to become an actor. And you haven't really seen the outside world that much. You haven't been around London all the time, because I'm a kid from Jersey. It's a tiny island in between England and France. And when I'm not in Jersey, I'm in the walls of my boarding school. And so to have the world kind of reach in and start investigating who I was a very, very exciting thing. And then I had to have the conversation with my parents about the last year of my schooling. And I said, well, what do I do? And they said, look, you've always wanted to become an actor, go for it, see what happens. If it all falls apart, if it fails, you can go back to school, you can get your A-levels. But otherwise, run with the ball. And so I did. And here I am now. The only way one can play a character who is so intelligent that he can dissect every other character before they have a chance to speak is a fantastic writer. It's all up to the writer, it's all up to the director. An actor can do whatever they want, but if it's not on the page and it's not in the scene already, and the director isn't able to pick it up, and the editor isn't able to put it together, then there's no hope for that character to look that intelligent. And so it's all down to the amazing ability of Jack Thorne, Harry Bradbeer, and the editors.